Okay, honey, so the next thing for us to learn is called absolute values. And basically what absolute value is that it ensures that a quantity is always going to be positive. So it's going to take, say, a -5, the absolute value. So the bars here, these bars like this, mean absolute value. So if I have an absolute value of -5, it's going to turn that -5 into a 5. And the way that it does this is by multiplying by a negative. So let's start with our little rule that we have here. The absolute value of P is equal to a positive P if it's greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0. And it's going to be equal to a negative P if P is less than or equal to 0. So, okay, what do we mean by that? Well, for example, again, if we had an absolute value of 5, now 5 is greater than or equal to 0. I mean, it's greater than 0. So therefore, it's just going to be 5, which is what we have here. P, in our case, P is 5, this 5 here. And if 5 is greater than 0, then we just write the answer 5. But if we had the absolute value of a -5, then our P here, our P right here is -5, and P, since it's -5, is less than 0. So since -5 is less than 0, we got to multiply it by a negative. So P is -5, a -5 times a negative is a +5. So this turns into 5. So, like I said, the idea of absolute value is to make every quantity positive. So what this looks like on a graph is like this. This is what it looks like. Say we had y equals the absolute value of x. Okay? So what does that mean? So let's now, since we have a variable x, we can just start plugging in terms. So let's say x is 1. Let's call it, say x is 1. If x is 1, y is 1. So 1, 1, there's a point right here. Okay? X is 0, y is 0. There's a point at 0, 0. If x is 2, y is 2. So 2, 2, there's a point right here. And what happens is there's just a straight line like that. Alright, those are for positive. These are for positive x's. So what if we have negative x's? So I'm going to say x and y. If x is -1, so -1, then y is 1. So all I did was use our property like we talked about here. So I said x is -1, and in our case, x is p. This p here is -1, right? Since -1 is less than 0, then we just multiply by a negative. We multiply -1 by a negative, which is a +1. So that's how I get +1. So x, if say it was -2, so now I have y is equal to the absolute value of -2, and this equals +2. Why? Okay. Again, in our case here, this p would be -2. And since -2 is less than 0, we need to multiply it by a negative. So we would have a -2 times a negative gives us a +2. And again, so again for negative 3, we have y equals the absolute value of negative 3. Again, just to reiterate, in our case, p would be equal to negative 3. This negative 3. So since p is negative 3 and negative 3 is less than 0, then we need to multiply our p, which is negative 3, times a negative. So negative times a negative is a positive, and gives us a positive 3. So 3. So we can just plot this. So x is negative 1 here, and y is 1 here. X is negative 2 this direction to the left, and y is 2, so here. And x is negative 3, so it's negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, 1, 2, 3, there. Okay, and then 1, 2, 3. So, okay, so x is negative 3, and y is 3, so negative 3, 3, right here. So it looks like a straight line going like this. So that's what absolute value plot looks like. Okay? So again, I mean, every time you have the absolute value, you just, if it's positive, leave it as a positive. And if you have a negative, say negative 123, then you just multiply by a negative. Negative 123 times negative is positive 123. Okay. So the next step is having this little, this is having, for example, an inequality. This is an inequality. So what does that mean? Well, that means if I anytime you see something like this, which is an inequality, what this means is that you have 3 minus 8x less than, or actually, yeah, less than 0, or 3 minus 8x greater than or equal to 0. Now why is this? Again, because our plot looks like this. Okay? It always looks like this. It can be shifted up, shifted down, shifted to the right, or not shifted to the right. It can be shifted up and down like this. Okay? So anytime you see something like this, you have to write this here. You have to write 3 minus 8x is less than 0. So the less than 0 is this portion. Be greater than or equal to 0, this portion. Okay? That's where this comes from. So you have to write this, and you have to solve for it to get the answer. So let's do that. So this guy is going to equal to 3 minus 8x is less than 0. So we need to solve for x. Okay? Now, we need to solve for x. So here we go. So first things first, we're going to move this term here to the other side to make it positive. So we have 3 minus, 3 plus 8x, like this. Okay? Then we need to divide the 8 over. So we have 3, so I'm going to divide by 8 and divide by 8. So this is a 1, so that just goes to 1. So I have 1x. So then I have x is going to be greater than, because this is a greater sign here, greater than 3 over 8. Okay, so I'm just going to write this to the side. X is greater than 3 over 8 for 3 minus 8x is less than 0. Now I'm going to do the other one. 3 minus 8x is greater than or equal to 0. So here we go again. Just do the same thing here. I'm going to move over the 8x here to this side. So all that means is I'm going to add 8x and add 8x to both sides. So these 8x's cancel out, and then I just have 8x on this side. So I have 3 is greater than or equal to 8x. And then divide out the 8 to each side. So that's a 1, it goes to 1. So I have 1x on this side and 3 8s. So I have x is less than or equal to 3 8s. Okay, so I'm just going to write right here, x is less than or equal to 3 over 8. For 3 minus 8x is greater than or equal to 0. So the answer to what is the absolute value of 3 minus 8x, well, it's going to equal two different things, two answers. So it's going to equal 3 minus 8x is less than 0 for 4, and we usually put a comma like this, for 4. For x is greater than 3 over 8. And same thing, so now I'm going to write this one. It is also equal to 3 minus 8x is greater than or equal to 0 for x is less than or equal to 3 over 8. So that would be our answer to what is the absolute value of 3 minus 8x. So you have two answers, and the reason you have two answers, again, is because you have a graph that looks like this. So this is one slope, which is this guy, and another slope here of the line, which is this guy. Okay? Alright, so the next thing is we just have a little bit of properties of absolute value. So you have the absolute value of a times b, is equal to the absolute value of a times the absolute value of b. So all this is saying is 5, for example, is 5 times 6, the absolute value of 5 times 6 is equal to the absolute value of 5 times the absolute value of 6. So both of these answers are going to give you 30. And this one gives you 30. So 30 equals 30, so it's true. So if we had negative, so we have 5 times negative 7, what's the absolute value of that? Well, that means we're going to have negative 35 on the inside. What's the absolute value of negative 35? Well, it's negative, so I just need to multiply by another negative, so negative times negative is a positive, so that gives me 35. So what if I use this example here? Well, I did the absolute value of 5 times the absolute value of negative 7, and that's going to equal to, the absolute value of 5 is just 5, and that's the value of negative 7, so I have a negative, so negative times a negative is it's a positive, so I need a positive 7, so I have 5 times 7, so that equals 35. So you can see that this property is true. And same thing for dividing. So if a divided by b, the absolute value of a divided by b will be equal to the absolute value of a divided by the absolute value of b. Again, it's the same thing. So if I had say I had negative 2 over 1, the absolute value of this will just be the positive 2 over 1. And again, so I have an absolute value of negative 2 over the absolute value of 1. Over the absolute value of 1, that's equal to the absolute value of negative 2, so it's a negative, so a negative times a negative is a positive. So I get positive 2 over 1. Same answer. Now, this is where it is, I guess, a little tricky. So I have the absolute value of a plus b is not equal to a, the absolute value of a plus the absolute value of b. Now the reason for this, it can best be shown through an example. So let's say I had 2 plus negative 7, the absolute value of 2 plus negative 7. Well, if I just do the math on the inside of the absolute value, I have 2 minus 7, which is just negative 5. So the absolute value of negative 5 equals to 5. Sorry, this equals to 5. Okay, what if we try it on the other side here? Absolute value of a, so a is 2, plus the absolute value of b is negative 7. So then the absolute value of 2 is just 2. The absolute value of negative 7, negative times negative is positive, so we'll just have 7. So plus 7. This obviously gives you 9. Now as you can see, they're not equal to each other. And that's why the absolute value of a plus b is not equal to the absolute value of a plus the absolute value of b. So on your test that you take, you most likely see some type of inequality again. So you would have like 4 minus 5x. What is the absolute value of this? So then you would say, okay, for my two cases, I have 4 minus 5x is less than 0. And then you'd solve it, and you would get, so if that's the case, then you have 4 is less than, move the 5x to the other side, so 5x, and then divide by 5, so 4 over 5. Like this. So x is greater than 4 over 5 if 4 minus 5x is less than 0. And then you do it for the other case, which is 4 minus 5x is greater than or equal to 0. And you would solve this just like we did this side. So you have 4, move the minus 5x to the other side, is greater than or equal to 5x, and divide by the 5. So you have 4 over 5 is greater than or equal to x if 4 minus 5x is greater than or equal to 0. So then you would write the answer to say the absolute value of 4 minus 5x is equal to, you put brackets to signify that there's two answers to this. So you'd say it's equal to 4 minus 5x is less than 0, comma, if x is greater than 4 over 5. And you write this one, 4 minus 5x is greater than or equal to 0 if x is less than or equal to 4 over 5. And this is your answer. Alright, so one more example on absolute values. So here's another example. Say we had, let's say we had 4x, put negative 4x minus 5 is equal to 0. What is the absolute value of negative 4x minus 5? So we would say, well, for case 1, we have minus 4x minus 5 is going to be equal to, or actually, sorry, not equal to, but less than 0. And for case 2, we have minus 4x minus 5 is greater than or equal to 0. And then we just solve these two. So let's say this time I don't want to move this to the right side, but I want to move the negative 5 to the right side. Well, I have negative 4x is less than, move the negative 5 to the other side, so I get 5, positive 5. So you see that I have a negative term right here, this negative 4 term right here. So what do I do with that? Well, I need to divide it out. Okay, well, let's divide it out. So I have a negative 4, divide by a negative 4. The only tricky part here is, okay, this goes to 1. This is just 1, so I have 1x on this side. Thing is, when I'm ever dividing by a negative, and I have this, like a inequality here, this less than term, I have to flip the sign if when I'm dividing by a negative to the other side. I have to flip it when I do that. So I would have x is greater than, so I flip the sign because I divided by a negative constant here in front of the x. Flip the sign. So I have a negative 5 over 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you that it gives you the same thing if we initially went ahead from the first step and just moved the 4x to the other side instead of the 5. So I have minus, I'm just going to write the equation here, minus 4x minus 5 is less than 0. So I'm going to move the 4x to the other side first. The minus 4x to the other side. So minus 5 is less than positive 4x. Divide by the 4, minus 5 over 4x. Now as you can see, they give me the exact same answer. Just the x is on this side, so if I wanted to write the x on the other side, I would just say x is greater than minus 5 over 4. And they give me the exact same answer. So let's go ahead and do this other one over here on this side. So I have minus 4x. I'm going to move the negative 5 to the other side, so greater than or equal to 0. Greater than or equal to 5, positive 5. Then I'm divide by negative 4. So divide by negative 4, divide by negative 4. So I have the x, we flip the sign, is less than or equal to minus 5 over 4. So again, I'll show it to you this time moving the 4x to the other side first. So I have minus 5 is greater than or equal to, move the minus 4 to the other side, positive 4x. So then divide by 4, minus 5 over 4 is greater than or equal to x. So that gives me the exact same answer. X is less than or equal to minus 5 over 4. X is less than or equal to minus 5 over 4. Same answer. So remember, anytime when you have a negative constant in front of your variable and you divide it over to the other side and you have an inequality, that means you have to flip the sign. You have to flip it. So you go from greater than or equal to less than or equal to. So and in this case, less than to greater than. You gotta flip the sign if you want to do it that way. If you just want to do it this way and don't have to even worry about flipping signs, or flipping the inequality, that's fine. Just do it this way if you don't think it makes any sense to you to flip this thing. But you will run into times where you have to go ahead and flip that inequality no matter what. So it's good, you need to remember, you have to remember that property. So that property is just, again, you have a negative sign, it says greater than 0. If I put 1 here, not 0, 1. So if I want to move this term, just solve for x, get x by itself. I got to divide by negative 5, but since I'm dividing by a negative, I got to flip this inequality. So then that means I have x is less than negative 1 over 5. Okay? Have to do that.